is a spiritual deity. Freedom and liberty and justice shall fight for you. When you fight for freedom with all your soul, take it from me. This is Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB, the voice of the nation, the voice.
And here is a special announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile. This is BCB.
As we commemorate the genocide committed against Biafra in this month of October, I want to solemnly reflect on some of the things that happened during the genocidal war that Nigeria waged against Biafra. Some facts are very clear to us that Biafra did not start the war, did not want the war, did not solicit for the war, did not do anything wrong to invite such aggression of monumental proportions. Biafra fought in self-defense, and the people gallantly defended themselves and their land, and we are proud of themselves, regardless of the fact that over 3 million lost their lives, over 1 million children, women, of hunger and starvation that ensued because of the blockade that was imposed on a very young democratic nation. And so in Biafra, Africa died because fellow brothers and sisters of other African nations turned their backs, except Ivory Coast, Gabon, Tanzania, Zambia, and our kith and kin in Haiti that recognized Biafra and provided aid and support in some way. People have opined that the death toll could have been even worse than 3 billion had it not been for the intervention of Doctors Without Borders, the Caritas, the Canadian Council of Churches, the Irish priests, and many others that provided aid and support, and the airlifting of Biafra children to Gabon, to Ivory Coast, and some to Haiti. But I want to reflect more on the book of Susanna Krenje and Oberon Wu, and just read some very, few paragraphs that really touch my heart as I reflect on the things that went on at the time. It was cheerfulness which most visitors to Biafra found difficult to take. We had hardened ourselves to expect sights of starvation. Even so, it was not easy to sit with a mother and her small son of 2, trying to interest him in some sweets and knowing that the child was going to die in the next few weeks. Knowing too that one's own government and people were deliberately encompassing his death in pursuance of a marginal and problematic interpretation of their own selfish interests. Children suffering from advanced stages of kwashiorkor or protein deficiency are listless, with puffy legs and distended bellies. Later, these legs become thin and shriveled. The skin peels off. Their hair turns orange and falls out, and they die. They watch you, but their large, round eyes are without much interest or curiosity. Only a saint could honestly claim that his first emotion was one of compassion rather than of horror. On seeing 1,000 such children patiently queuing for their mothers for the fortnight's scoopful of powdered milk at Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Umuahia. But only someone less than human could have seen the injured pride, the tenderness, and the distress in their mother's eyes, and come away thinking that the reunification of Nigeria at such a price was anything but an obscenity. From massacres, from bombing, from constant uprooting of home and family, from a profound and unalterable conviction in the justice of their cause, there grew among the Biafran people a fatalistic acceptance of death, almost an indifference to it. Every new loss served to strengthen their determination. It was not a national position. It was not a rational position. And the callous, calculating mind in London and Washington could make nothing of it. The Biafrans, they decided, must be collectively insane. Yet, all the time, Biafra was being run as an efficient modern state. Electric power stations, breweries, oil refinery plants were no sooner built than destroyed or captured. No sooner destroyed or captured than rebuilt. Unable to import anything except strategic necessities, the Biafrans relied upon their ingenuity and determination. Biafra in general, and Igbos in particular, had never been noticeable for their unquestioning acceptance of authority. And every case had to be tried as thoroughly and with as much argumentation as in time of peace. This is where the judiciary, the government, every arm of it was still functioning, even under severe bombardment and attack from the Nigerian forces. With Nigerian forces only 4 miles away and shells falling on the outskirts of Umuahia, judges of the Biafran High Court under Sir Louis Mbanefo, the Chief Justice, took off their red robes and powdered wigs and adjourned the hearing until 3 days later in Olo. There was very little thieving, but the tension of the time produced its crop of dangerous driving charges. Crimes committed through drink and occasional murder. A major function of the police force and judiciary where crimes against property were concerned was to protect the criminal from the wrath of his fellow citizens. Biafrans in general and Igbos in particular had never been noticeable for their unquestioning acceptance of authority. That's why they say Igbo Wednesday. It's unquestioning acceptance of authority. We question everything, and rightly so. The crime of genocide. There is little evidence that any British citizen has physically involved himself in any activity which might be described as genocidal by first effect. The shooting of civilians, mutilation and burial alive of children, deliberate bombing of civilian targets with genocidal as opposed to military intent, or physical implementation of the blockade in the knowledge that it was inflicting 10,000 civilians' death a day, mostly among children, in the national, racial, ethnic group against which it was directed. If it is true that no British citizen were involved in any physical activity which can be described as genocidal by the first effect, then the law's application can only extend to those within British jurisdiction who may be guilty of conspiracy or incitement to commit genocide. Before this can be established, it is necessary to establish that the crime of genocide, as defined in the convention given above, has in fact occurred. And the convention is the British Genocide Act of 1969, implementing the United Nations Convention on Genocide, defines genocide as any act falling within the definition of genocide in Article 2 of the Genocide Convention. This article is annexed to the Act, and for the purposes of clarity, we give it here in full. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly interfering or transferring children of the group to another group. Clause 1, Section 4 of the Act intends its application to any attempt, conspiracy, or incitement to commit such an offense. Nigeria is not a signatory to this convention, nor, of course, do Nigerian citizens in Nigeria fall under the jurisdiction of English law. The main difficulty here is to establish the mens rea, or intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, or racial group. The law does not distinguish between primary and secondary intent. And if it could be shown that General Gowon and the British government knew that the consequences of certain actions were genocidal, in that they were resulting in the partial destruction of a national, ethnical, or racial group, and that with that knowledge they persisted in those actions, then they have no defense against the charge that the resulting partial destruction of a national, ethnical, or racial group was intentional. So as we reflect in this month, as we think about the millions of lives destroyed, the intentional destruction in part or in whole actually in part of our ethnic group of Biafrans. We hope that someday the perpetrators of this heinous crime against humanity, against Biafrans, will be brought to book. Some of whom are still alive today, some are not. But we've seen all over the world where people who committed grievous offenses, even though they're no longer alive, can be tried posthumously and justice given to victims, so that the spirit of the dead may finally rest in peace. As we pray in this month and reflect and contemplate, may we call to mind all those brave soldiers that lost their lives, all those children with distended bellies and thin legs and rounded eyeballs, dying slowly. May we think of what could have been. And those that were airlifted and survived and now lost their roots, maybe settled somewhere in Gabon, in Ivory Coast, in Haiti. We know that the blood of Biafra flows in them. As we remember all that died and those that survived, the remnants of Biafrans that survived the war, and ensured that out of the ashes that we rise again. And our hope and aspiration is to restore that nation that functioned marvelously well for 3 years. Its judiciary, its government, its public services working efficiently well despite the aggression from Nigeria. That nation will rise again and fulfill the hopes of our people and give peace and rest to our departed. Land of the rising sun, we love and cherish. We will keep fighting until the day of liberty arrives, the day of our freedom, the day that we'll stand in our land as a free people, as a free nation. And with our hearts and minds and hands and feet, commence the job of nation building with pride and with conviction, to build that nation set on a hill that cannot be hidden, that hope of Africa. We call on everyone to take responsibility, to die to self and to rise in common hope and common purpose, to put away selfish interests and unite. For this cause is a noble cause. All hail Biafra.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Fellow Biafrans, this is Rosama, and this is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra. We use this opportunity to pause and remember the Asaba massacre of 1967. In early October, between October 5th and 7th, 1967, Nigerian government soldiers in pursuit of Biafran troops entered the town of Asaba on the southwestern banks of the River Niger in present-day Delta State and massacred all male residents over the age of 10. The residents of the community had come out to the town square in their traditional ceremonial white outfits, chanting, "One Nigeria, one Nigeria," to welcome the soldiers. They had expected peace. Instead, the soldiers separated the men and boys from women and young children and shot all males over the age of 10. By the end of the chaos, between 500 to 700 townspeople were killed, some reports state. Others claim that the number is much higher, ranging close to 2,000. In his journal entry for that day, Major General Odumegwu Ojukwu writes that more than 1,000 Biafrans had been killed by Nigerian soldiers in the town of Asaba. Federal troops occupied Asaba for months, raping women and girls, pillaging the community, and forcibly marrying many women and girls as war trophies. What is a fact is that the people of Asaba had experienced mass atrocity. Worst of all, survivors buried their dead in mass graves where they had been killed. There were no individual burials for anyone, as was customary. The young were buried with the elderly, the poor with the titled men and elders. For the people of Asaba, this act was an abomination, not only because the dead were not given a befitting burial, but also because more than half a century later, the scar of the atrocity remains a reminder of the larger issue of Nigeria's refusal to resolve the question of Biafra. The residents of Asaba were massacred because the Nigerian government defined them as Biafrans, as Igbo, and therefore subject to extermination. This was, and still is, genocide, and would become a model for other cases of Nigeria's acts of atrocity across Biafra throughout the war. While the Nigerian government has not offered an apology, at least a reasonable one, for the Asaba massacre or similar massacres in Biafra during the war, and has not made any attempts to address the denial of human rights for Biafrans decades later, General Yakubu Gowon would apologize for the massacre, claiming that he was unaware of the extent of the harm done. Hear him in his own words, quote, "It came to me as a shock when I came to know about the unfortunate happenings that happened to the sons and daughters of this state, especially of this place, of this domain. I felt very touched, and honestly, I ask for forgiveness, being the one who was in charge that time. Certainly, it is not something that I would have approved of in whatever. I was made ignorant of it, I think, until it appeared in the papers. A young man wrote a book at that time," unquote. Like Gowon, many people in Nigeria and across the world are unaware of this atrocity. Many remain unaware or refuse to acknowledge the atrocity Biafrans continue to experience today. If your question is, why return to this massacre each year? Or if you're one of the ones who says, why not just forget about it? It's done. It happened a long time ago. We say, It is because we do not wish to forget. That's why we return to this massacre each year. We memorialize it because we want to remember so that we may not experience another atrocity such as this. It is because we must tell our story in our own words so that the world may know us and so that the next generation will know their history and will remember their past. It is because the atrocity continues. It is because until Nigeria resolves the question of Biafra and stops atrocities such as these that have continued to plague us, we must not stop talking about it. We must remember. I am Rosama, and I am passing this story on to you that you may tell it. You must tell the story of Asaba Massacre, for it too is the story of Biafra.
The more we fight together, 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 the more we fight together, and stronger we shall be. The more we fight together, 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 the more we fight together, and stronger we shall be. Rising soul, hey, rising soul, yeah. Biafra is the only hope of Africa. Biafra is the only hope of Africa.
Thank you for listening to us today. Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Hail to